Hey everyone, before we start the video, I want to thank today's sponsor, Bespoke Post. Bespoke Post is a monthly membership club that delivers awesome stuff straight to your door. Each month, they have new products ranging from outdoorsy stuff, which you guys know me, love the outdoors, but they also have stuff for your home, kitchen, they got barware, they got clothing, they got food sometimes. When you sign up, there's a little quiz for you to take so that they can tailor the boxes to better match what you are interested in. Each box usually has around $70 worth of stuff, but only costs $49. And you get to preview what's in the box before they send it to you. So you can keep it, you can swap it for something else, or you can skip it altogether for no charge. You only pay for what you want, and you can cancel your subscription anytime. 90% of the products in these boxes are from small businesses, with a lot of them being located in the US, which I think is great. You know, for example, this hammer and style carving knife that I got, these guys are from Tennessee. So I ended up getting 3 things. I got some slippers for around the house, you know, work from home all the time. My feet get super cold, so I've been wearing these basically since they came in the door whenever I'm walking around the house. Next, we got a nice carving knife here. Danielle loves rotisserie chicken, so this is nice to quickly slice through everything. It's amazing what a good knife can do for you in the kitchen, even as a kitchen casual, as someone who just dealt with bad knives for forever. Also got this s'mores kit that we're going to use this weekend when the buds come over. I mean, I feel like s'mores are self-explanatory. Who doesn't like s'mores? You can take this little kit wherever you want and just boom, s'mores on the go. To get 20% off your first box, click the link in the description and use code DATTO20 at checkout, or go to bespokepost.com/Datto20. That's Datto20 at checkout, or bespokepost.com/Datto20. Thank you very much, Bespoke Post, for sponsoring this video. Glaives. They're literally in the game. And ever since their debut, they haven't really gotten the attention that I think they've wanted to get. The Exotic Glaives recently became available, and I would like to chat about them because videos about exotics do really well. I mean, because they have unique functions that I would like to discuss along with glaives as a whole. Each class gets its own unique exotic glaive. You can obtain the blueprints for the other classes by running Wellspring. A lot. Took me a while to get them, longer than I would have liked. I think about 25-ish runs to get both of them. We're going to talk about the exotics towards the end of the video, maybe like the second half. But to start, I just want to talk about the glaives themselves, so get clickbaited, you absolute fool. Now, when I first wrote this video, the main concept behind it was that glaives were just not very good in endgame content, and that's not wrong. I don't want to use a glaive in GM content, but I don't want to use it in master content either. And after grabbing more footage for this video, I don't want to use them in legend content either. Story mission, lost sector, whatever. A glaive without the ability to stab things somewhat safely is just a bad grenade launcher with a shield attached to it, and using that over other exotics is just not a smart idea. And the video progressed with me kind of talking about where glaives can thrive right now and all that. And I ultimately came to this realization, this profound realization, that to ask glaives not only be viable, but potentially a top tier option in endgame content is probably unreasonable. But then I found that they weren't really that viable in the tier below that, and then also the tier below that, and probably the tier below that one. In endgame content, melee builds and close range weaponry like shotguns have not, and likely will not thrive due to the danger you need to expose yourself to in order to get maximum use out of those builds or certain weapons. The only time we really get to have a melee build work is when Bungie decides to give us Passive Guard, a seasonal mod that gives you a ridiculous amount of damage resistance when using a sword. Bungie has to break conventions and just give us this damage resistance because we stand basically no chance otherwise. Is it possible we see Passive Guard also apply to glaives at some point in addition to swords? Sure, I think that's well within reason at some point, maybe this year. It's not a guarantee though. But even with all of the glaive mods we get in Season 16, I still don't want to touch them, like at all. Now imagine life without these mods, and you can see why everyone is skeptical about the future of glaives. And then this video was just gonna continue without me playing any endgame content with a glaive because I felt like I knew the outcome. But then I saw some Reddit posts like giving some praise to glaives and some other discussion, and I got nervous about not completely verifying it for myself, and oh god, why do I have a glaive on in a GM? I ran Scarlet Keep on Grandmaster with a glaive and anything else that I thought would help me while mainly using a glaive. And let me tell you, it went exactly how you think it went. First off, this is a very different playstyle you need to adapt to if you're not familiar with it already, which almost no one is, so there's a learning curve for sure. The thing that I liked about the glaive was that it allowed me to do everything that I'm normally able to do. The thing that I didn't like was everything. Everything that I did was simply a worse version of what I'm normally able to do with a non-glaive weapon. The melee is only good on bigger targets that you can keep suppressed, and I use the word good very loosely. It's the only way to get repeated melee attacks in without feeling like you're gonna die. Not to mention, when half of GMs have a modifier that makes enemies drop a pool of fire, or electricity, or goo, or whatever, the last thing you want to be doing is standing next to said enemy when it dies. So that leaves the projectile attack. The projectile attack's damage is pathetic, and my overall effectiveness with a glaive is so much worse than just throwing on any other special weapon. I need 2 shots to kill an acolyte. You need to use the shot somewhat close as well. This is not a long distance weapon, and I only used it to try to charge my shield, which I would then use to try to tank, never really feeling like I was successfully able to fulfill that role. This leaves you with only a primary weapon and a power weapon for the added benefit of having a shield when you go to res someone, despite the fact that it is the glaive user that will likely be dying the most. Yes, you could just charge the glaive and only use it in emergencies, but I think it's just way better to help contribute on offense. With more experience will come more effectiveness, but even at maximum effectiveness, I don't think I would be more effective than if I just used a normal loadout. This is a playstyle that very few amount of people will bother trying to master, at least as glaives are right now, and those that do master this playstyle are going to be people who will undoubtedly be more effective when not using a glaive anyway. This is not something you can just throw on and be good at. This is going to take some time. This run in particular ended in heartbreak when both of my teammates died and I went to use my special exotic ability only to try to activate it, sprint too soon because it takes so long to activate, shoot the floor, do nothing, and then died to a wizard. This was the only instance where I even had a good opportunity to use the exotic ability in the run. As soon as the glaive mods go away, all of that suppression utility is gone. It's nice to have Unstoppable instantly active, but if you know the strike spawns, it's not really that big of a deal. Using a glaive in a GM should be done to say that you did it, and then you can just go back to using normal weapons. So while it was nice to know that I was right about my first impressions and thoughts about glaives in GM, I'm still kinda glad that I tested it anyway to be sure. But then even in gathering footage for this video, doing a 1550 story mission by myself, I was just not having any fun at all. I'm working twice as hard for the same results. The same went for a Legend Law sector. I had played with glaives early in the launch, but then hadn't really touched them, and I knew that they were rough, but dude, I'm so much more effective just running a normal build. It's much more fun to run with a normal build. The only reason I see myself using a glaive is to simply challenge myself for no reason. If I'm with a team, alright, the dynamic is a little different, but I'd still much rather be using one of the many builds that I can use rather than constantly putting myself in danger with a glaive. So I ask, where are glaives supposed to be good? It's not the end game. They barely hold up in Legend content. So just seasonal content? The Legend campaign? Just in places where death is meaningless? I understand not every weapon's gonna be good everywhere. I know that. It's not reasonable to ask for that. But glaives are at worst unusable in mid and endgame content, and at best are a slog. It's just not enjoyable outside of a seasonal activity or the strike playlist. I'll even give you the raid because the raid's not at level. If the goal wasn't for them to be viable in endgame, I would understand that. But like, sure, they're fine in seasonal content, everything is, but they're not great in the mid game either, or just against anything that's remotely threatening. I don't know what niche they're supposed to fill. Like, bows took a little while to find their niche, I suppose. They got there eventually, right? But what are glaives supposed to be good for? My guess would be to assume some sort of tank-like role where you're in the fray and all that, you pop the shield and you're stabbing. But Destiny isn't really set up in a way for that kind of thing to succeed versus just doing what we've normally done. A tank-like role is a full-blown raid mechanic in Destiny. Can you make a glaive work? Yeah. But is it worth all the hassle right now? No way. Bunch of things really need to be looked at here outside of just having to put yourself in dangerous situations. Number one on my list is giving glaive shots the slightest bit of AoE. You ever fire a glaive shot into a group of enemies that are super close together, like a pack of thrall or something, and then get extremely disappointed when only one of them dies? Because I do, all the time. Given how big the projectile is, and just the feeling of shooting it, you kind of feel like when you fire it, you're gonna kill multiple targets if they're shoulder to shoulder. When that doesn't happen, it feels really bad. I'm not saying make the shot explode or anything, but giving it the slightest bit of AoE to make shots like that feel a lot better would go a much longer way than I think people realize. Number two is a common community request. Impulse Amplifier feels like a requirement on the glaive to make the projectile experience feel better. I don't know if that's something Bungie wants us to intentionally build for. You know, they're big on build crafting right now. But given the state of glaives, I think any kind of a boost here is more than acceptable. Number three is experimenting with the idea of getting glaive energy on melee hits. Not a lot. You're gonna have to work for it. But let's have a discussion at least. I know part of the incentive from using the projectile should be getting a ton of energy, and they actually buffed the energy gains from the attack. You only need 4 shots instead of 6 to fully charge. But if there was a way to get a little bit of energy per hit, or energy after a certain amount of hits, I think that's at least worth discussing. Number 4 is definitely weapon perks. As of now, stuff like Frenzy, Swash, and Surrounded only work for the projectile part of the glaive. I can understand subclass aspects, or some fragments, or certain armor mods, or exotics like Worm God Caress not working on glaives. I can. Those things are built for the melee ability of your character. But we're really gonna live in a world where I can't even boost the damage of the melee attack via Frenzy? Really? Let's talk about the exotics now. Get unclickbaited. At full energy, each class can hold reload to do a thing. Titan plops a mini Ward of Dawn on the ground with none of the benefits of a ward, besides the shield itself. Warlock gets a healing turret that shoots you with a heal ball every couple of seconds, giving you a big chunk of health. And Hunter can fire a tracking shot along the ground, which will seek out a target, dealing high damage. You know what these glaive effects feel like? Alternative class abilities. Not the Hunter one, you know, the other two. Like if the Titan and the Warlock glaive abilities were class abilities that you could swap to, that would be interesting. Like a spin on our current class abilities. You need to tweak them a little bit, but it would be interesting. That's what they ultimately end up being though. Class ability level effects. But just not as good as the ones we have now. We already have good class abilities. Titan Barricade does a decent job, especially the Void one. Rift is one of the best abilities in the game. And Dodge is still really good for getting out of danger or doing a stealth res or proccing some sort of other effect. Not to mention all of the synergy of the abilities that is built into the subclass itself, aspects and fragments. Having an alternative, additional, weaker class ability as my exotic perk, especially one that is tied to a part of the weapon that people are not really using that frequently, is not strong enough to warrant its use. The Warlock Glaive, for example, 4 shots in the magazine. You need to hit 4 shots to get full energy, which means you need 4 hits in a row. Then you reload, then you chamber the ability, then you shoot the ability, then you wait for the ability to spin up, and then you're good to go. Now you can swap a perk to give you 5 shots in the mag, but then you hit 4 shots, you chamber the ability, you shoot the ability, you reload the glaive, then you can start again. It's so slow. Now let's factor in some less than ideal scenarios. You missed a shot. That's probably bound to happen. Now you definitely gotta reload. Now let's factor in the seasonal mods, which you would think you would want to use, stuff like suppressing glaive, only to realize that it now takes energy when you shoot or stab something and suppress that target. If you're not full 100% energy, you cannot proc the exotic ability. And having to hold myself back from using the glaive so that I can drop this ability feels awful. It feels awful, especially if I tag a bunch of smaller enemies and they all just soak my energy even though I'm one-shotting or two-shotting them. People thought the Hunter Glaive was going to be the worst. I'm calling it the best because it just dumps out some damage and you move on. At least it's helping on offense. The other 2 abilities, you gotta sit there, you gotta plop it on the ground, then you gotta play around it. Hunter is just dump it on the ground and you move. Glaives and the exotic abilities need so much help. This is my 3rd time writing this video. I was way too nice on the 2nd iteration. These might be some of the worst exotics in the game, and I know that exotics aren't always meant to be good. Sometimes they're just fun toys. These aren't even fun. The Glaive Shield is already incredibly strong as far as defensive abilities go, so stuff like the Titan Bubble feels more like a novelty than something that I'm actively going to use. With the Warlock healing, I never quite feel comfortable using it as my healing because I just never have a good vibe on when the healing is going to hit me if I'm moving around a whole lot. The Hunter ability is hit or miss quite literally. If the shot tracks to the wrong target, then it can feel like a waste, but at least the damage isn't too bad. Regardless of all of that, I feel like I'd be just fine with a regular legendary glaive, freeing up my exotic slot for something else, and just be content stabbing things in the face and occasionally shooting the projectile at bigger targets. You have to give up too much to warrant using an exotic glaive. I don't think any of this should be too surprising to anyone who's been using glaives at all, or has, like, played the game since Witch Queen. They've been pretty underwhelming as far as a weapon choice goes. The only place I feel comfortable using them is your generic day-to-day content. I don't want to use them anywhere else because it's just not worth it at all. Could this be a skill issue? Sure. Do I think it's a skill issue? No, I think glaives are weak. A skilled player can make them work, but a skilled player will be more effective on a normal loadout. Help these things out, Bungie. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.